Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things Giallo and Giallo adjacent here on The King and Giallo, and this is another series of unscripted talking head movie reviews. I will be doing a series for the Vinegar Syndrome Forgotten Gialli Volume 9 box set, so this first one will be for the 1993 Giallo by Bruno Mattei, Madness, also called Eyes Without a Face. Has nothing to do with the French film from the 60s, and it's also called The Eyes Within or The Eyes Inside, depending on what Italian title you go off of. Again, I did watch this movie twice. I watched it initially and was planning to record the review and all that, and then I ended up having to go to LA and San Bernardino, so rewatched it. And did I gain any new insights upon the second watch? Not quite, although it was good knowing what was about to happen and kind of seeing the pieces, so I was able to see the pieces a little bit better. But in short, yeah, I would say this movie is good. It is mid-tier Giallo. I kind of have the opinion that 90s Giallo films is where it really starts to fall off, where it really starts to feel even more cheap and not necessarily in a charming way. I have said that 2000s onwards, the Giallo films start feeling like made-for-TV movies. And you get a little bit of that in the 90s as well. But yeah, this is essentially Tenebre with a little bit of some kills out of Blade in the Dark, and there was a little bit of a character, and what was revealed with them, which kind of reminded me of Opera. But it's generally Tenebre, but with a comic book, not a horror novelist, which kind of tells you where the movie is going, which I was wondering initially as I'm watching this if it was going to go the exact same route as Tenebre, and I was kind of playing with that, but ultimately, yeah. Here, let me give you a little bit of information about the movie before I really go into spoilers. According to IMDb, the plot is a comic book artist, Giovanna, is attacked by the press when a real murderer copies the crimes of her fictional character, Dr. Dark, and she gets phone calls from a stranger who claims to be the killer. Yep. There's also let me give you the one from Wikipedia, because that actually also gave a little bit more. On Wikipedia, it is, the film is about Giovanna Dei, Monica Carpanese, who is the creator of the comic series Dr. Dark, a character with a split personality. After a series of murders begin to happen in a similar fashion to how Dr. Dark's fictional... Okay, that's not really worded correctly. To how Dr. Dark's fictional murders, Day defends herself against any criticism of the violence in her comics and later finds that the murderer is leaving the eyeballs of her victims in her apartment. I mean, that's like the first 15-20 minutes of the movie. But yeah, so there are some interesting things with this. Right out of the gate, they come to you with the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. Character can have split personalities, which makes you wonder if there's going to be a character, one of the main characters, who is going to be the killer because of that whole theme. Plot-wise, let me just get into some things that I knew I wanted to talk about. The movie starts, and it's at like a racetrack for... what are they, go-karts? I think there's another name for them, but the go-karts, whatever. And so you're watching a circuit race of these. People are watching it, and there's a kid with a babysitter, who you find out later. Initially, you assume it's probably just a kid and his mom, but the kid's got like a ray gun toy, and he just starts aiming at people and like pulling the trigger, which is like, oh, it's just a kid being a kid, but nobody finds this cute. Everybody is annoyed by this, as they should be. I mean, I understand it's just a kid, but I don't think anybody really likes having someone point a toy gun at them and being like... And so this kid is pointing this toy gun at like every guy, and then eventually he like walks away because he's like, nobody appreciates me. Walks away, and then we pan across and we like stop on these like black shoes of the killer, and then it's a POV of the killer as they start following this kid out of the arena. We don't know what happens to the kid, and then the babysitter goes, and the babysitter gets killed. And similar to Black Belly of the Tarantula, the killer will inject his victims with a syringe with something that presumably paralyzes them, or at least makes them docile, allows them to be killed. And then he shoves it. Now, the movie calls it a stiletto, and I tried looking this particular weapon up, and I could not find it. But yeah, it's like a two-pronged stiletto knife thing. I don't know if this is used for something. If somebody knows, please tell me, because it looked like it was something you would see in like a hat shop or something, but I don't know. It also then looks like it's supposed to be a weapon, but I don't imagine anybody ever really using this as a weapon. But yeah, it's like a little two-pronged stiletto knife thing. It went from being like, okay, this is really cheap to, oh, okay, we're getting eyes gouged out. Oh, okay, that's fun. I'll go with that. And then we go to a press conference with the writer, artist, and the publisher of the Dr. Dark comics, and everybody is just attacking this comic because of the recent murders, and you need to be more responsible. This is having a horrible effect on people. That whole shtick, that whole thing, which any artist who's ever had to work with anything that's a little dark has to always deal with that. And I thought what was really funny in this scene is the crowd is always just like, yeah! And they'll switch sides. So initially it's like, this is trash, this is violent, and this is going to make people act crazy. Everyone, yeah! And then the illustrator, Giovanna, will be like, this is just a comic. This da-da-da-da. She'll defend it. And then everybody, yeah! And so it's like, could you have at least talked to the extras and say, okay, you guys are on the side of the press. You guys are the fans of the comic. So that way it's not everybody cheering at everything all the time. It's maybe half the people are cheering and then the other half are cheering, whatever. So the killer also is a very stereotypical Giallo killer in all black shoes, black pants, black trench coat, black gloves, black hat, and then the mask has a huge zipper going up it, so I call this killer Zipper Face. It's just like, oh, how can we make our killer different? We'll just give him a big zipper that goes right down the middle of it. But yeah, we're introduced to our main cast of characters. They, for the most part, are fine. The writing in this is fine as well. It's not bad. It leaves more to be desired, but it's also not terrible. The acting, however, is a mixed bag. It plays into that Italian style, that European style of being very over the top or being kind of just like transparent, just kind of disappearing into the background. And that seems to be the main problem. So I mean, I haven't read the section. I think I have my book by Troy Howarth here for the 90s, but I haven't read it on this yet. I'll do that when I eventually get to this movie, when I cover the 90s. But in the course of looking it up, I kept seeing excerpts from Troy Howarth about it. And he said that the acting is either like maddeningly over the top, which the movie is called Madness, so that kind of makes sense, or it's so wooden that they disappear into the scenery, which I thought was funny. And I kind of agreed with. The main girl, Monica Carpanese, she reminded me so much of Edwidge Fenwick. Like, she had the eyes of Edwidge Fenwick, but then she kind of had the face. She had the face of like an AV star. But yeah, it literally felt like the two of them. Initially, I thought, whoa, this girl really looks like Edwidge Fenwick. Great job on the casting. Someone who, you know, he could be a young Edwidge Fenwick, at least in the eyes. But anyways, beyond that, yeah, the acting is just very over the top. But again, if you've seen enough of these movies, it's not so bad that you're like, oh, God, this is horrible. But yeah, what else do I want to say about this? The music was by Flipper Music, and I wanted to make a joke about that. But then I found out that Flipper Music is a music library, so they just didn't pay anybody to make the music. They just took music from a library, which is like, all right, that's fine. This is a very, very low budget movie. That was another thing you keep reading about, is that they made it incredibly cheap. And yes, this is an Italian film, but this was primarily made for foreign audiences. So that is interesting, because a lot of these Giallo films are Italian, made for Italians and whoever else enjoys them. This was like, no, let's make a movie specifically for foreign audiences. So the cut that you get in the Vinegar Syndrome box set is in English, and it's dubbed in English, but it matches with what they're saying, so they're speaking English. The dubbing was also a little annoying. Not that it was bad, but it's just the way that a character talks is kind of like this. It's very astounding, but it's also not. Again, I've heard that a lot in 70s Giallo films, so it's just crazy that 20 years later they're just emulating what has been done before. The detectives in this movie are both very, very good and incompetent at the same time. Okay, so let me actually go back before I start spoiling it. But this is spoilers, but anyways, it all makes sense. So at that scene at the press conference, there's a journalist sitting in the front who is kind of like the spearhead for this whole thing. He's standing up and he's just like, this is horrible. This is da-da-da. And he takes one of the comics, and he's like, if it was up to me, I'd burn them all. I'd burn them all. And he takes the comic, sets it down, and he sits down. Immediately I said, that guy's the killer. Because why would he take the comic? I don't know. To me, that was the movie tipping its hat a little too hard. But that guy, I said, he's the killer. And About 30, 40 minutes in, he's revealed to be the killer. He's caught. He's you see this babysitter attacked in the beginning, then you see this other babysitter attacked, and then when the illustrator, the main girl Giovanna, when she goes home, the disembodied eyes of one of the victims are there, and she's freaking out. And later on, she's like a few scenes later on, she's attacked at her house or wherever she's staying, and her pseudo boyfriend, not quite boyfriend, but he's the writer, comes in and is like, Giovanna, what's wrong? And so it's kind of like Scream, where you're thinking, hey, either that is the killer and he just took off his disguise, or there is another killer and he just happens to be there. But he's like, it's okay. It's okay. And then you see the shadow of the killer run by, and he chases the killer. And then they're struggling in the streets, and the killer gains the upper hand, but then the police show up and shoot him. He's still alive, though, rip off the mask, and it is the journalist. And then he starts acting crazy for the rest of the film. He's just like, I love them all. I had to kill them. Okay. And the police, this is what I'm saying, like, the police are actually pretty good. They know something's up. They're like, something doesn't add up. They're like, yes, we caught him. Yes, he was attacking you, but there's no proof that he is the one that broke into the house, or he's the one who put the eyes there. And I thought that was a little odd that they're so good that they know it can't just be him. Okay. But as it goes on, yes, it's not him. And it's also unclear if he actually did attack any of the women, or if he just attacked the illustrator. And I think he just attacked her. That was something upon the rewatch that I was looking out for. Like, okay, so is this two people, or is it one person did all the killings, but this guy was just a crazy stalker, a la Opera? So as we go on, she's like the publishing assistant, I think. She's attacked, and it's the same thing with like the needle, and then the killer doesn't kill her, but stages all of this evidence to look like she's the killer, and he types a confession on her computer, because all these people are just like, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I did this, I am so filled with remorse, I can't go on living anymore. And while he's writing this, and she's slumped over the desk in the most unnatural looking pose for anyone who would have taken their own life, she starts like writing something on a post-it note, and the killer catches her, takes off that post-it note, and leaves. And then later the police show up. Giovanna shows up with what was the writer's name? It's not important, but Nico and Giovanna show up, and she's just like, freaking out. And she basically plays that for the rest of the movie, or at least half the time. Half the time she's freaking out. The other half, she just kind of seems like she's really, really stressed. But anyways, the police are like, yes, this should be case closed. All the evidence is here. It just doesn't seem right. And so they're really good about like, but again, they're written that way. So, because it's not like in some other Giallo films where I feel like was it Death Walks on High Heels? I feel like the detective is really good, but he's cleverly written. In this one, it just feels like they're smart because that's how they were written. Simply put, he's just like, something doesn't add up. It's like, okay. Sure enough, later the publisher is killed, and it's like, if you were trying to pin all these murders on this one person and like make it look like it's all done, why would you kill somebody else after that? But anyways, you get into the final moments of the movie, and they're mostly happening like with the main characters on a boat, but the detective is investigating the crime scene again. He's just like, once again, he's like, something doesn't just add up. Oh, and then he starts talking about the killer. He starts talking to the killer, and he's like, yeah, did you break in? Did you do this, you son of a bitch? And immediately I'm thinking of Manhunter. Like, that's what the detective did in that. Like, did you want him to look at you? That was another thing, is the killer would cut their eyes out, and he put like glass in their eyes, like Manhunter. But anyways, he's looking over the crime scene, and he's like, why would you be, he says the blood doesn't match, and then she had ink on her hand, which corresponded with like trying to write with a pen in an unnatural way. And he's looking at the pen, and he's looking at the post-it note, like, what would you be trying to write? And he looks at the post-it note, and you can see very clearly, because I used to be, I think I am still like this, where I write really hard. So if I write in a post-it note and you take the post-it note off, you can see a clear indentation of what I wrote, because I'm better now, but I used to be really bad. But you can clearly see the name Giovanna, like, just through the hard indentation. And then he starts like going across it with a pencil, where you can see the text lifted, and we can see the last part of it where it's like Ovana, and he's like, oh my god. And then we get to the end, and it's near the end at least, and it's revealed that the name was Giovanna, which is like, yeah, So it's Tenebre. Some other things that I thought were funny, like just odd in terms of the writing, was at one point Nico and Giovanna are hooking up and she's like freaking out. She's having nightmares and he goes to get some medication for her and he sees all these like notes on her wall, which to me, I'm like, okay, so she's crazy. That was a big indicator. But one of them was a list of the names of the victims. And I'm like, okay. And he, for some reason, collects all this evidence that could incriminate her, and he tosses it in the ocean when they're on the boat because he really loves her and he really wants to protect her. That's fine. Anyways, so yeah, this movie is fine. This is in terms of the 90s Giallo films, I haven't seen a whole lot of them. I've seen enough that I can say that this is probably like B tier of the 90s Giallo films in terms of like the entire canon across the decades. I'd say this is like a C, maybe a D, like a low C. It's fine. It's fine. It's actually better than a lot of the other ones that I would try not to rip apart totally. But you got to remember also it's coming 20 years off the heels of some of these other Giallo films. So they're starting to get derivative. This is the era of Giallo films where they went from being, ideas. The 60s Giallo films are ideas. That's why I call them proto Giallo films. And then after Bird, it becomes a bonanza. It's like, oh, this is something that we can do. We can do these relatively cheap and we can sell really well. And it harkens back to the paperback days that these Italians love so much. And so then it exploded. You have the golden age. And then you go a little past the golden age and you just have the like oversaturation era where it's like they just were everywhere and they didn't die. And then eventually they started kind of falling out a little bit and you get the late era. And then I think by the time you get into the 90s, it's like really late. And I would call it like the decay era where it's like they're still making these. And then when you get into the 2000s, it's even like, dude, it's kind of done. But hey, we like them. We still will watch them. But this is a decent one. This is a good one. So if this is the worst one on the box set, I'll be really pleased with that. If this is the best one on the box set, I'll be disappointed. We'll see. This is only the first one I've watched, but yeah. And then I thought it was interesting that Bruno Mattei he went under a different name for the director. Poor Italians, they just can't sell their movies. It's so funny to me that it's like people won't want to, the idea that people won't want to watch this movie if they know it's Italian. So instead we'll just make up a name that they've never heard of that looks a little more American. Like, maybe there was some science behind that, statistics, but to me it just is like, why bother making up a name? I don't know. But Bruno Mattei is like, people know his name, at least nowadays. So in hindsight, it seems a little foolish. But yeah, I think that is about all I've got to say for this movie. Fairly enjoyable. Not a bad time. Let me know what you thought on it. And yeah, I guess we'll see you at the next one. But yeah, leave your comments, questions, curiosities, concerns. I will get back to you. And yeah, let's go through these. Thank you very much for watching this. This is Tanner Leeser for The King and Giallo, and nothing else. I'll see you next time.
I thought you guys are kind of used to these things.
In the movies, Doctor. That happens only in the movies.
Hmm.